Hello and welcome to The Rest is Politics US with me, Katty K, on election eve.
And me, Anthony Scaramucci. We're just one day out from Election Day, and I just want to remind you that I'll be covering the U.S. presidential election through the night on November the 5th, live in studio from New York City. I'll be joined by Rory and Alistair from The Rest is Politics, Dominic Sambrook from The Rest is History, and Marina Hyde from The Rest is Entertainment. What a blockbuster lineup. We'll be live on YouTube from 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday afternoon and back again at midnight through to the early hours of Wednesday morning. For those of you in the UK, that's 8 p.m. on Tuesday evening and back again on Wednesday morning at 5 a.m. UK time. So don't forget to tune in. Just search The Rest is Politics, America Decides on YouTube. The shows will also be available to watch afterwards on Spotify. Search The Rest is Politics Election Video Special. Okay, Katty, what do you want to talk about on today's show?
Well, first of all, I got a bit of FOMO because I won't be with all of you guys from the Goal Hanger team, but I'll be on the BBC and we'll be texting each other, I'm sure, Anthony, as the night rolls on.
Well, you'll be missed for sure. But I want to, if you're cool with it, I'd like to get right into it with the Iowa polls, because I think you just interviewed Ann Seltzer, who did that poll, and obviously she's a well-regarded pollster. What are your thoughts on the Iowa poll that came out? And of course, for viewers and listeners, that was a surprise poll. Vice President Harris 47, Donald Trump 44, and a lot of pushback from the Trump campaign on that. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so we'll talk about this Des Moines Register poll, and I did just interview Ann Seltzer, so I've got a bit more detail from her. It's a poll that has surprised people because Iowa, as you've been hearing, if you've been following Anthony and me for the last few months, is not on anyone's list of battleground states. People are not expecting Kamala Harris necessarily to win Iowa. Barack Obama won it in 2008. He won it again in 2012, but a Democrat hasn't won it since then. But why people are focused on this Des Moines Register poll, which was conducted by Ann Seltzer, which is a very reputable poll. Ann Seltzer is a very good pollster. She's widely recognized as somebody who understands Iowa very well and has very thorough methodologies. People are focused on this poll because it shows a swing towards Kamala Harris since the summer and even since September, and now has Kamala Harris ahead in Iowa. So it's not necessarily that people think Kamala Harris will win Iowa. It's that what Ann Seltzer is showing is momentum towards Kamala Harris. And I mean, that's what you and I have been feeling when we've been texting over the last few days, right, Anthony? That's what we've been feeling, is that Kamala Harris seems to be closing this with momentum. And I can tell you a bit more about Seltzer's poll in a second, but I want to hear what you've been hearing about momentum.
Okay, so the campaign is saying yesterday in Pennsylvania, 807,000 doors were knocked. 940,000 people were called in Pennsylvania from their phone bank. Now, some people think those calls are annoying, but the campaigns believe that these calls are very effective. They actually pull people out and they get people to the polls. You're laughing because you don't like those calls, right, Katty? You don't want to get a call like that.
Those calls are up there with somebody trying to sell me a new dishwasher. I mean, I don't want to take those calls, but I do know they think they are effective.
I would try to sell you a new dishwasher. Okay. You probably
sell me a Lamborghini and I might buy one. There you go.
Well, you know what? You looked a little bit too good in the Lamborghini. Okay, I'm getting a lot of feedback on this. Okay.
What have you been hearing from the Kamala campaign?
I just think that they are different from the Hillary Clinton campaign. They are very cautious. They don't want to sound exuberant, but they do believe that they have the momentum. They do believe that she's winning on normalcy. She's winning on value. She's winning on the open tent. I think that she's losing white men. And so this is almost like a battle between all women versus white men that are going to show up for Donald Trump, particularly uneducated white men, people without college degrees. So that's really where the race is right now. But I will say this to you. I don't like the concert in Philadelphia. And if you don't mind, I'll just explain that briefly. Wouldn't. Don't like it. And so I texted 5 or 6 people from the campaign, said, guys, I don't like it. 3 people came back defending it. 2 came back to me and said, could you call this person? Could you call that person? Not text them. Could you call them? Because I think you're right, because you're going to have 20,000 people there that could be running their field operation. So those are 20,000 loyal Democrats that are volunteering, that they're inviting to this concert. They could be in the field, okay? And so, just for viewers and listeners, this is a concert that's likely going to be at the Wells Fargo Arena again in Philly. Hillary Clinton did something like this in 2016. The very famous Katty Kay, I think, was present at that concert. It was a star-studded affair, but it doesn't play well with the non-elites in that state. And so, Katty, my family's from that state. The western side of that state feels like Ohio. The eastern side of the state down by Philly feels like New York. But the northeastern side of the part of the state and the center of the state feels a little bit like Kentucky.
Mm.
I think it's a tin ear to be doing a star-studded concert again when that was not a great idea for Secretary Clinton in 2016. But that's just me. I want to point that out to people, because if she loses, you and I are going to go through a whole list of things that they did. We're going to say this is probably why she lost. If she wins, of course, I have that list as well. And she's generally run a very good campaign for somebody that started on July 21st. So I like her odds here.
I knew that you wouldn't like the concerts. We don't like star-studded concerts on The Rest is Politics. And I know that you have a little PTSD from that final night in 2016 when she was there. I was there at that big blowout concert in Philly, and you were in a field with Donald Trump where he was saying, she's with the stars and I'm with you. And it worked that time around. So I'm a little surprised that they're doing that again when they've been so keen to distance themselves as much as possible from all the messaging and the symbolism of Hillary Clinton's campaign. It's felt like a little odd choice. Let's talk a bit more about that Ann Seltzer poll, because one of the things she said to me when we interviewed her on Morning Joe this morning, I interviewed her on Morning Joe this morning, and I asked her about the issue of abortion, because it seems to me that abortion it's only polled, Anthony, throughout the year number 3 after immigration and the economy. And I'm just wondering if it's more of a sleeper issue, particularly for women, than we might have known from the polls. So in July, Iowa introduced a 6-week abortion ban. After 6 weeks, women can't get abortions. Most women don't know they're pregnant by 6 weeks. Now, I asked Ann Seltzer this. Some of her polling after July, after that ban was introduced, didn't immediately show Kamala Harris ahead. So what is it? Is it just that this issue has taken a little time for people to hear about, to focus on? And she was really interesting. She said that the majority of Iowa, if you poll people on the issue, the majority of the state thinks that abortion should be legal in most cases. And they don't like this 6-week abortion ban. And as the weeks have gone on, they've actually seen in a poll in September, Kamala Harris closing the gap on Donald Trump. And now this final poll on the eve of the election, they see Kamala Harris ahead of Donald Trump. And what she's seeing is women, particularly women 65 years and older, independent women turning out for Kamala Harris at a rate of 2-1, which is a huge, big bonus for her. And she does think that the whole issue of abortion and Iowa's draconian ban on abortion, is what in these final weeks. And I don't know if you've noticed in the press, there's been quite a lot of coverage just in the last few weeks, Anthony, of women who have had reproductive health issues that have got dramatically worse. Some women who have even died because they could not get the healthcare they wanted around the country. And Ann Seltzer's view is that has filtered through to the Iowa electorate. And what's interesting about Iowa is the demographics of Iowa are quite similar to the demographics of Wisconsin. And so the question then becomes, in one of the big battleground states, is there a similar movement of women over 65 and independent women in these final days shifting towards Kamala Harris?
I think so. And I have a Roman Catholic mom who goes to church every Sunday, goes to confession on Saturday. So if you're Catholic here, that's a very traditional thing to do. She's turning 88 in January. Who did you vote for? I voted for Kamala Harris. Why did I vote for Kamala Harris? I want women in this country to have the reproductive freedom. And I'm very, very worried about everything that you just said.
So interesting.
So that's an 88-year-old traditional conservative woman. Conservative in terms of religious theology, not in terms of her general politics. She's fairly progressive that way. But my point is, a lot of women are looking at this issue and saying, "Whoa, I don't want to take that step. It's too draconian." Something else happened, and I was on a show this morning in Australia. I got up early, which is why I'm wearing my. We're not at a funeral yet, Katty. We're going to be at a funeral for somebody, metaphorically. But I got the shirt and tie on because I was on a show
I
this
hope you've got
morning.
your outfit planned, by the way, for election night for your YouTube. Because that's going to project. I know you do messaging. You message through your outfit.
Black on black. Should I be wearing black on black? I mean, I don't know. Should I have like the rosaries like on my hands like this? But anyway, so the woman said something interesting to me I want to share with everybody. I was on a show with her. She said, what's interesting is we're immune to Donald Trump's verbiage. I want to shoot people. I want guns pointed at Liz Cheney. The America is a garbage can. I'm going to go after my political adversaries using the American military. We're immune to him. But something happened at MSG, the Madison Square Garden rally. She pointed this out. I want to share it with you because I think it was a brilliant insight. We're not immune to his minions saying things. So when Steve Miller says America is America for Americans, people are like, whoa. When the comedian says there's a pile of garbage floating in the ocean, it's Puerto Rico, people are like, whoa. When one of his donors says we're going to slaughter, we want the other side slaughtered. And she thinks that the MSG thing popped the bubble.
That's so interesting.
It's a very hard bubble to pop because Donald Trump has license to say anything that he wants. But there was his highest profile event that he's probably ever had in the 8 or 9 years that he's been running, 20,000 people in his hometown, Madison Square Garden. And his minions with the Trump mind virus were trying to out-Trump Trump.
Why is that? That's such a great point. I hadn't thought of it, that he can get away with saying stuff that people around him cannot get away with saying. Is it just because he's Donald Trump and he's the showman and so people love him, but they don't know who that comedian is and they certainly don't know who Stephen Miller is? And so when they say things, are they seen as avatars for Donald Trump, or what is that?
I think so, but I also think people are like, wait a minute, those are his soldiers that are talking like that. They may really mean what they say. Like Trump is given the pass. He doesn't really mean that. You could see when he said, I would like to have the bullets shoot through the media towards me, and people behind him were giggling. They see that as humorous and they see that as him as a showman. But I just think when they see his minions who are potentially going to be in the cabinet or working in the White House saying the same thing, that's when the fright starts.
Or the event in Michigan over the weekend where his microphone didn't seem to work and he got really angry and he said, I'm seething up here. And I watched the bit of the rally. And at one point he says, do you guys want to see me go backstage and smash people's heads? And it was so, do we want to, and the idea of him going and beating up the stagehands because the microphone isn't working. I mean, yes, that's super annoying. And he's complaining about how he has a sore throat and these things are so taxing on him. And he's already done 2. And the least they could do is get the microphone working. And does he want to see people's, heads banged together? And but the crowd behind him does laugh. You're right. You see all these people laughing like it's part of the show.
Well, it's Worldwide Wrestling Federation. It's WWF. It's he's the WWF candidate, but the other people can't get away with it. And so again, if he loses, it'll be
because they're not Donald Trump.
Not Donald Trump. It'll be the abortion issue, and it'll be, whoa, he's attracting people. Let me tell you something. General Kelly was never getting to a microphone at Madison Square Garden and saying what Stephen Miller said. Mark Milley, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, never saying that. Jim Mattis, Rex Tillerson, these men, okay, and even women, Nikki Haley, UN ambassador, not getting to a microphone, talking the way those people were talking at MSG. But now he's surrounded by people that will do that, and they will try to out-Trump Trump. And I think it's got people in the last week very nervous about him.
I just remembered I just saw in my notes one other thing that I thought it was worth raising in our interview with Ann Seltzer this morning, because she pointed people, if we're looking for sort of tells on election night, she pointed to the fact that there are 4 congressional districts in Iowa, all of them are Republican at the moment, but in two of them, which are in the kind of more populated areas of the states, the Democrats are currently ahead of the Republicans. And she says this is the same phenomenon. It is women, especially college-educated women and older women, turning out to vote Democrat right down the ticket. And she says you could have now a situation where in Iowa you go from 4 Republican members of Congress to 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, which that would help, of course, the Democrats as they're in their bid to take back the House. And it was a sort of, I just mentioned it because it was a sleeper race. I hadn't really focused on the Iowa. Full disclosure, I had not been focused on the Iowa House races, but I will now be watching those 2 on election night.
So the most senior member of the House of Representatives that is on the Harris team, he's asked me not to give up his name, but I can share the information, is super tight with the campaign, sees the innards of the campaign, very tight with Harris. And your people could probably guess who it is because also from California. I said, okay, give me the great scoop. They have her narrowly winning. They believe that she's going to win based on the data that they're seeing and what Pluff has done in terms of the organization. They see the House going to the Democrats, flipping. Okay, but they see the Senate. They see them losing the Senate. They see Casey beating McCormick in Pennsylvania, helping Harris in Pennsylvania. So again, that's them, and that is 24 hours ago. I said, okay, give me the straight scoop. Pretend I'm the vice president and brief me on what you know from inside the campaign. And that was his analysis.
The final push to D-Day. Well, actually, in a way, we say the final push, but you have to remember that 75 million Americans, which is an incredibly high number, have already voted in this election. I love Election Day itself. Everybody in my family, I'm not an American citizen, but everyone in my family who is an American citizen of voting age all go off to the polling booth. They really enjoy the actual Election Day and the kind of atmosphere around it. But clearly, millions of Americans have already decided to vote early. So where are the candidates? Kamala Harris, very focused on Pennsylvania. She has, I think it's 4 different rallies that she's holding in Pennsylvania, Kamala Harris is going to have a series of events in Pennsylvania on today, ending with a huge, big concert that we mentioned earlier in Philadelphia itself. Donald Trump is in North Carolina. He's got a couple of events in Pennsylvania, and then he ends in Michigan, where he's going to hold his final rally in Grand Rapids. That's where he ended in 2016 and 2020. Of course, 2016, you were there with him in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Is that a superstition thing for Donald Trump? We know that he is superstitious. Is that why he does it?
Yeah, he's very superstitious. I think it was a great way to end the campaign last time because it was super energized. He's gasping towards the finish line this time. As you pointed out, he's complaining about a sore throat. He's limited the number of stops. He's 8 years older, and you can clearly tell he was wobbling into the garbage truck. He's having a harder time moving around. But yeah, I think that's it. I think that Michigan looks like it's going to her. Wisconsin looks like it's going to her. It feels like a dead heat in Pennsylvania. And I would bet that his team is saying, hey, she's in Pennsylvania. You should be in Pennsylvania. But he's too superstitious for that. So he's going to end up in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, it's 5 stops that she's doing in Pennsylvania today, in Scranton, Reading, Allentown, Pittsburgh, and then ending up in Philly. I had dinner last night with somebody who had been to his rally in Pennsylvania yesterday, the rally where he said, if you want to shoot me, you'd have to shoot me through the fake news. And it was really, this is a visitor over from the UK who's just here on a kind of political tourism week, which is a kind of extraordinary thing in and of itself. And they queued for an hour and a half. They waited for him for 3 hours. She said that by the time he arrived at 11 a.m., the crowd was kind of flat. He did not manage to re-energize them. hundreds of people were leaving early. They were kind of streaming out, as soon as he arrived. Basically, they wanted to see him, but they didn't want to hang around for an hour's speech because they'd already been waiting for 4 hours. And her takeaway, and she was quite surprised by this because she'd heard about, Donald Trump rallies being great shows, was just how flat it was and how down and low energy was her expression, and rather kind of surly he was throughout the thing. She said it just wasn't the fun show she had been expecting. And yet you contrast that, and I wanted to get your take on this, Anthony, with her final days. She does Saturday Night Live on Saturday night. She stopped mentioning Donald Trump on purpose. The campaign has decided they're going to end positive and optimistic and upbeat. And it's in her demeanor as much as anything. I mean, if you took these two candidates just in a study of psychology and took this snapshot of time, it feels to me like there's a big difference.
It does, and I agree with everything that you just said. But I want to ask you a question before I give you some of my analysis. If you're waiting 4 hours and you stream out when he arrives, if you're waiting 4 hours, to me it still smells like you're going to go to the polls, right? If you're there waiting for the guy, it's not like you're leaving.
No, that's true.
The reason
They're still going to vote.
Why Trump is late all the time is he is a little bit of a narcissist, doesn't care about your time, but the real reason is he pours it on with the people that he's with. And so he's a good retail politician. Again, you can hate him, but he's a good retail politician. So when you're with him, the volcano is going, the lava is flowing, and he wants to stay to the last minute or overstay. And you and I both know that President Clinton did that, was great at that. But then it leaves the other people that he's scheduled to meet with waiting for him. But
right.
If they're going to wait 4 hours for him in cold weather in northern Michigan, Katty, they're voting for him. And you have to just know that,
She said there were a lot of car number plates from out of state. She felt that not everybody was from Pennsylvania, and it was a bit more of a cold shower than a hot lava show from him, that it was just a bit flat and down.
Okay, I didn't realize. I thought it was in Michigan. I didn't realize it was in Pennsylvania.
No, this was in Pennsylvania, and he just was not a good.
Pennsylvania.
It was still pretty cold in Pennsylvania. Yeah. So, what are you going to be watching for tomorrow night? One thing, I had some text conversations back and forwards with a senior Trump campaign advisor just last night. And by the way, they are still feeling confident, or at least telling reporters like me they're still feeling confident. This advisor said, look, we have Nevada and Arizona basically locked up already. We haven't actually had the final vote yet, but they say they've locked up Arizona and Nevada. They think they look good in North Carolina and Georgia. North Carolina is interesting because Trump has actually visited there quite a bit. He's there today. He's been there recently, and you wonder if they think that North Carolina is locked up, why is he still spending his precious time there? But anyway, so I wonder about North Carolina. But here's the state that this Trump official mentioned to me that I hadn't heard about, and I'm still a bit skeptical about, which is that they are getting good numbers from New Hampshire, which of course at the moment is a democratically held state, and they think that New Hampshire is in play. So it could be a fun one to watch for our viewers, just to kind of remind people, if you're looking for tells, just if suddenly you see Trump doing super well in New Hampshire, then that would suggest that it was a good night for him. By the way, color me skeptical on that one, but it's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Because I just want to explain to, like we see this and we see poll shifts, but I want to talk about machinery, because in the 24 years that I've been involved in presidential campaigns, 6 campaigns, there's machinery in place. Okay. So Harry Reid, do you remember Harry Reid?
Yeah.
Okay,
so great poll from Nevada.
Right. So Harry Reid was the Senate Majority Leader. He's passed now, but he was an old school silver miner from Nevada, and he controlled that state with an iron fist, and he had machinery in place that brought out the vote. It was unions and bus drivers and casino workers. And, Trump is saying he's going to win Nevada, no taxes on tips. Harris, incidentally, said no taxes on tips as well, but I think Trump's voice is louder than hers. But the Republicans think they're winning Nevada. Now, I'm going to tell you, Katty, I believe that they're going to lose Nevada. You can call me out on this next week, because of the machinery, the churn. And I think it's the same thing in New Hampshire. My friend Scott Brown, you may remember him. He was a senator from Massachusetts. He lost to Elizabeth Warren. He moved to New Hampshire to run again. He said, "Oh no, I'm definitely going to win." He lost. I said, "Why'd you lose?" The machinery, the Democratic machinery in New Hampshire knocked him out of the box. And so those states, in my opinion, are going to go to Harris. The flip side of it is in Florida in 2016, we were waiting cautiously for certain precincts in Florida. DeSantis has taken control of that state. He's got the machinery up and running for the Republicans. That is now a red state. We don't even talk about Florida in terms of a toss-up anymore. But you do remember this in 12 and 16, Florida was considered a purple state.
And by the way, God bless Florida, because they do something that they do not do in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. They process, which means they open the ballots of mail-in and early votes early before election day, which means that by kind of 9-10 p.m. on election day tomorrow night, we will have the result for Florida. Because Pennsylvania and Wisconsin aren't allowed to touch those mail-in ballots, there are millions of them this year, until 9 a.m. on polling day, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Of course, it takes them a lot longer. And that is why we may not get a result. I remember Congresswoman Dean, I think I mentioned it the other week when I went and visited her. She is predicting that we will get a result from Pennsylvania on Wednesday night. But it's possible that it takes longer than that in some of these battleground states. In a state like Arizona, it can take days. And of course, that is the window that we're all watching a little nervously, because it's the time between the polls closing and getting the result that is the moment when somebody makes mischief, when people start saying it's fraudulent, exactly as he did back in 2020 when Donald Trump came out and said that he had won, even though the ballots hadn't actually been counted. So if election officials can speed up that process, and I know that in Florida they've got better machinery, they've got better processes. In Pennsylvania they've got better machinery and better systems in place, and they hope that it's not going to take the 3 days that it took in 2020. But it's a precarious time for American democracy, this time between the polls closing and the final result actually being tallied and announced.
So let me ask you a cynical question. Okay, Josh Shapiro says that he wanted them to be able to open the ballots early. The Republicans in the state Senate blocked it.
Same in Wisconsin. The same thing happened in Wisconsin.
So why would state senators in Wisconsin and state senators in Pennsylvania, Katty K, why would they block that?
So I was just on this
Can
morning
anybody
with
sense my cynicism? I
no,
hope people can sense
God
my
forbid
cynicism.
that.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Katty
So
K.
I was
Tell
on
us
with
why. Tell us why.
I was on with the chair of the Democratic Committee, who we were interviewing this morning on television, Ben Winkler from Wisconsin, and we were talking about this and the move that there had been there. Actually, it was a bipartisan move in Wisconsin to try and get this to move faster so that you could start processing the ballots before Election Day. And it was a few Republican members of the state legislature basically killed the bill. And yes, you are right. The supposition is that they want the delay. The Republicans want the delay because they want that time for Donald Trump to be able to say, I won the election, and start filing lawsuits or trying to prevent the count, or saying we have to stop the count now, as he did in Pennsylvania. He said, we've got to stop the count. It's done. It's over. I've won. I don't know. I hate to be a cynic about this. I hate the idea that people are so cynical about, and I think of all, including my daughter, all of these people in America who will tomorrow give up their day and turn up at 6 a.m. to go and volunteer at polling stations. And what an incredibly, I find it a very moving experience, Election Day in America. And all of these old women and young people and young men who volunteer and spend their time and help people at the polling stations. And there's something very moving about it. So I find it very depressing that people are being cynical about the way they would do the count in order to cause mischief.
The Supreme Court on Friday said that they rejected the emergency appeal from the Republicans that could have led to thousands of provisional ballots not being counted in Pennsylvania. So the Democrats won that point in Pennsylvania, and these things are only going to be decided by thousands of votes, Katty. And so that's important. Okay, so tune in. Rest is Politics. America Decides on YouTube. I'll be joined by our whole cast of people from London And we're super excited about that. And Katty, best of luck to you on the BBC on election night.
You too. And we'll be texting.